Hi everyone, welcome back to House Lavelle. A very interesting development has occurred and it's definitely time that we address it. We're diving into a story that cuts right to the heart of Canada's economic and political future. At stake are not just billions in public funds, but thousands of Canadian jobs, Canada's place in the auto industry, and some very big questions about transparency, values, and who really benefits from these massive government deals. If you care about where your tax dollars go or the future of manufacturing in North America, stick around because this story is about far more than just one economy. We're going to get into all of this, but before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like in this video, and if you haven't already and you enjoy the content, hit that subscribe button because it goes a really long way in supporting this work. Let's get into it. I'm going to go over an address from Raquel Dancha, who's the Conservative Shadow Minister for Industry. She's answering a couple of questions, and I've selected several clips that I thought were the most interesting.
And what we're trying to understand is the Liberal government made one of the largest corporate subsidies in Canadian history, $15 billion to Stellantis, which is one of the largest employers in our auto sector, $15 billion to produce electric vehicle batteries. And now just last week, we learned the shocking and disappointing news that production at the Stellantis Brampton facility is now moving down to the United States, putting 3,000 Canadian jobs at risk. So what we're asking for is, surely with that $15 billion historic subsidy provided to Stellantis, were there no job guarantees for Canada, for the Canadian-wide job footprint from Stellantis? It would appear not. And so now we have 3,000 families that may not be able to pay their bills, for their mortgage, and ensure their kids have foods in their bellies. Like, this is a very shocking development out of a company that the Canadian taxpayer has provided $15 billion for this electric vehicle battery plant. So it's very disappointing.
What we're hearing here is a real shift in the diplomatic landscape between Canada and its corporate partners. The sheer scale of this $15 billion subsidy, billed as the largest in Canadian history, was supposed to be a win-win, securing innovation, investment, and stable jobs for thousands of families. But instead, with Stellantis announcing the move of key production lines to the US, it really feels a bit like a gut punch to Canadian workers, their families, and frankly, every single taxpayer footing the bill. This is not just about a broken promise or a failed contract anymore. It's a wake-up call about how much leverage Canada actually has at the negotiating table when the stakes are this high. Are Canada's leaders fighting hard enough, or are they just signing over public money without real accountability? Here's the part that stinks for the average person, in my view. While these deals are cut in closed-doors meetings, it's ordinary Canadians who are left holding the bag, much like in the 2008 financial crisis. I'm not saying that we're anywhere close to that kind of level of economic pain, but this is not exactly easy either. With taxes already sky high and everyday costs soaring, housing, groceries, you name it, the working and middle class shoulders the lion's share of the tax burden. Actually, according to a 2022 report from Statistics Canada, the top 1% contribute less proportionally than most people think, while ordinary families pay the bulk of taxes. And meanwhile, CEO pay keeps climbing and the wealth gap in Canada is growing. The top 1% now own over 25% of the country's wealth. When public funds are used for corporate subsidies and the promised jobs vanish anyway, it's really hard not to feel like the deck is just stacked against you. Honestly, this is a problem everywhere, and I'm personally burning from the bottom of my soul to begin discussing inequality more openly. Wealth inequality, not income inequality. I guess that one too, but to a lesser extent. I know that this is a very strong comment, but I really mean it. Would that be something that you'd be interested in if I covered it? Please let me know in the comments below. And let's not forget here, the Stellantis story is not unique. Just this week, we have these other reports on new waves of cross-border tensions as companies chase fatter incentives in the US and Canadian jobs are put at risk again. It's a pattern we've seen with other manufacturers too. Big promises, big subsidies, then the jobs drift south as soon as a better offer comes along. If policymakers can deliver ironclad guarantees for the public's investment, maybe it's time we just rethink how these deals are done. Because ultimately what's at stake isn't just a few thousand jobs, it's a question of fairness. Are Canadian workers, families, and taxpayers being respected or just used as bargaining chips in a global race to the bottom? This is about the social contract people want in Canada in general, and whether the people who pay the bills have any real say in how the money is spent. If you feel like your hard work and taxes aren't buying you a better future, you're not alone, and stories like this is exactly why. If you like breaking down these tangled stories where money, politics, and technology collide, you might want to check out my upcoming book on critical thinking, Awake. It has a framework for how to cut through the noise and understand what's really going on. If you're interested in early access, there's a waiting list link below. And as always, if you appreciate these deep dives, you can support the channel on Ko-fi. Link is down there as well. But let's move on to the next bit.
Well, what we're seeing is manufacturing jobs, including in the auto sectors and others, bleeding to the United States at quite a rapid rate. In fact, over $50 billion of Canadian investment has outflowed to the U.S. since the Prime Minister has been in power over the last 7 months. That's a significant capital outflow, and that tells us that the Canadian business climate needs to be more competitive. So the Conservatives have put forward quite a comprehensive economic plan. We want to see Bill C-69, the No More Pipelines bill, repealed. We want to see Bill C-48, the tanker ban, repealed. We want to see the emissions cap repealed. We want to see the industrial
vis-a-vis the auto industry,
repealed.
But vis-a-vis
Again,
because this is Stellantis, and the Brampton plant. What about the auto industry? I understand that the bills you're outlining has to do with the oil and gas industry, but what about the auto industry? Do you support a counter tariff?
Right, but the point is that all of these anti-development measures from the Liberals over the last 10 years have made Canada less competitive, and we need more than ever to compete with the United States since we're bleeding manufacturing and auto sector jobs to them. Auto sector specific, we have called for the EV mandate to be completely banned, or to be completely done away with. So you may recall that the electric vehicle mandate from the Liberal government would penalize gas-powered auto producers to the tune of $20,000 per car if they go over the government-imposed quota. So imagine if you're an auto sector worker being hammered by the American tariffs. Would you be making investments in capital in Canada if there was an EV mandate hanging over your head? They've postponed it for 1 year, but it remains in place. So that would be certainly something we can do immediately to provide investment certainty to our auto sector.
Now the real economic stakes come in focus. It's not just jobs leaving, it's capital, expertise, and a sense of future security for Canadian industries. Over $50 billion has flowed south in just 7 months, according to Dancho, and at the center of the debate is the question of electric vehicles and aggressive new mandates. Should Canada try to keep pace with the US, or is it time to reconsider how and if these mandates work for the domestic industries in Canada? The push and pull over the EV mandate shows just how intertwined trade, environmental policy, and industrial competitiveness have become. Actually, recent analysis from the IMF and Canadian Climate Institute highlight how regulatory uncertainty and inconsistent climate policy are making it harder for Canada to attract and retain investment. While Ottawa debates how aggressive to be on climate targets, investors and industry see mixed signals. And that's very bad news for long-term jobs and growth. If you think about the pressure facing the average Canadian worker in the auto sector, it's no wonder there is anxiety and possible anger about the rules of the game changing with every single election. And let's be honest, the ordinary worker doesn't necessarily have the luxury of waiting years for policies to maybe pay off. While Ottawa debates big picture targets and international competitiveness, families in places like Brampton or Windsor are already feeling the effects. Layoffs, frozen hiring, and shrinking community investment. It's a double bind. Canada wants to lead on climate, but every new regulation comes with a cost, and often it's the working class who ends up paying first. This tension isn't going away anytime soon, unfortunately, and the uncertainty itself is making it harder for Canadian industry to plan and for workers to feel secure about their future. Let's check out the next bit.
The auto sector and the broader manufacturing sector are being hammered by high taxation from the Liberal government. They're being hammered by an anti-business environment after 10 years of Liberal government. Mr. Carney came to power 7 months ago promising that he was the one to get a deal with President Trump. He promised by July 21st. That was never delivered. He just went to Washington to negotiate a deal, came home empty-handed, and just days later, Stellantis announces that 3,000 jobs are at risk in Brampton, and they're moving their production to the United States. So we are seeing absolutely no deliverables, from this Liberal government or from Prime Minister Carney. We need to fight for our auto workers and get a job, get a jobs plan, and ensure that we have a deal with the United States. He promised that, Michael, and that's not being delivered. It's been 7 months. Canadians deserve results.
Okay, here's where the values debate comes to the surface. What does it really mean to fight for workers in 2025? Is it just about jobs, or is it also about holding leaders accountable, demanding transparency, and insisting on real deliverables, not just promises? The narrative of failed leadership and broken promises isn't new, but it hits harder when families are wondering how they'll pay their mortgage or keep food on the table. As I wrap up here, I have to ask myself and all of you, what kind of social contract do we want between government, corporations, and citizens? Are we prepared to make our support for big business contingent on real, measurable benefits for Canadian communities? And if not, what message does that send to the next company looking for billions in taxpayer support? And another question that I keep asking myself is, why did Carney even make that kind of promise? It's not like he can see the future. It's not like he can be hyper confident in negotiating with the US either, which leads me to believe that he likely said this to offer reassurance and hope. But hope is not a strategy. All of us collectively have to get comfortable with uncertainty, my friends. Maybe we'll get it done, and this is what I'm aiming for from a prime minister, has to become good enough. Otherwise, we all end up in these broken promises situations. Looking ahead, I expect these debates to get even sharper, not softer at all. As the US ramps up its own subsidies and protectionist policies, Canada will face a choice: double down on Canadian values or risk a race to the bottom. Either way, these decisions will define not just the Canadian economy, but Canadian politics and Canadian sense of national identity for years to come. Anyway, this is a huge, complex story, and I want to hear what you think as well. Was the Stellantis deal a smart investment or a cautionary tale? Should Canada fight harder for its workers, even if it means getting tough with trading partners? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more honest analysis on the stories that really matter. When we talk about multi-billion-dollar subsidies, climate targets, and shifting jobs, we're really talking about choices that will shape Canada's future for decades. This debate is bigger than politics, in my view. It's about the kind of country Canadians want to live in. As ever in politics and in life, really, everything stems from core values, and core values can be chosen. Is transparency a core value? Do we demand transparency and accountability from leadership, or do we accept that corporations will always chase the next big deal? Can a greener, more competitive economy be built without leaving working families behind? These are questions that don't have easy answers, but they deserve honest, respectful debate. So let's keep the conversation going. Share your own experiences, worries, or hopes for Canada's future. Your voice really matters here, and as always, I appreciate you being part of this community. See you next time.